The ancient Indian texts mention beautifully decorated chariots, or entire palaces called vimanas, that could take off and in a matter of seconds fly away as far as space. Some people believe these vimanas only existed in Indian mythology, but it's also possible that they were based on a real technology that had been lost over the centuries. According to the Vedic ancient Indian religious texts, there was the elephant vimana with several engines, and many other types named after animals and birds. There was one for local travel, one for visiting different countries, and one for traveling to the moon. In various planets they could develop a great speed. When Vimana had the superpower of invisibility. Another one was shaped like a sphere, and was built on the winds produced by Mercury. This Vimana was said to generate an enormous ray, like the sun, and make noise like the storm's thunder. All the Vimanas were unbreakable, and perfect for attacks on boats. Now to operate a Vimana, you'd need to know a lot of stuff, pretty much like today's airplane pilots. 32 secrets in total. They'd cover the aircraft structure, and the secrets of taking off and maneuvering without crashing. That's a good thing. The pilot was also expected to know how to be seen, and unseen, how to be hidden, how to be quick, how to manage contractions and expansion, and many other tricks. To hide the flying machine from foes, the pilot was instructed to move to the 8th atmospheric layer above the Earth and use the power of dark solar rays. This instruction might sound a bit weird, but there were others, more realistic ones, which still make sense in modern aeronautics. There are sections of ancient texts on the Vimanas that focus on details like flight paths, pilot training, navigation, and even suitable clothes for pilots, and recommended food for long flights. There was also a lot of technical detail about the use of heat-absorbing metals, the metals utilized, and melting points. The supporters of the theory that the Vimanas were more than just myths are sure that the ancient Indians would unlikely go into all these details just for a beautiful story. So the flying palaces might have been real, and way ahead of their time, like many other great Indian inventions. Back in the 6th century BCE, an Indian physician named Shishruta basically wrote the original guide to medicine and surgery. They even called him the father of surgery for his work. Shishruta laid down the details on hundreds of medicinal plants and described complex surgical procedures. He gave instructions on nose reconstructions and skin transplants from one part of the body to another. The original method of rhinoplasty, which involved taking a piece of skin from the forehead to reconstruct the nose, is still used today. But back then it had a slightly different purpose than surprising your followers on social media. Those nose jobs helped out folks who had lost their noses as punishment for crimes or in fights. Now you gotta thank an ancient Indian math prodigy for the invention of zero. It might not seem like a big deal, but without it, we would have no binary system and no computers. People before the 5th century CE were only thinking about some sort of a sign to indicate nothing. The invention made addition, subtraction, and other mathematical operations a whole lot easier. You can see the old A0 in existence, carved in the wall of a temple in Gwalior, India. The Indus Valley civilization was using rulers in the 15 BCE and earlier, made from ivory. These rulers were found during excavations in what is present-day Pakistan and northwestern India. They were widely used in architecture with amazing accuracy. They had units corresponding to slightly over 1 inch that were marked with precise subdivisions within 5,000ths of an inch. The next invention is more of a concept than a physical item. Standardization is all about setting the rules based on a bunch of people, things, or interests. One of its cool applications that we've all gotten used to is standard weights. Whether you're using pounds or kilograms, you need these universal measurements for weight right. For this, we owe a big shout out to the merchants from the Indus Valley civilization who lived around 4,000 years ago. They were measuring everything from food, grains, to fancy luxury goods using these standardized weights. And their weights had decimal and binary mathematical systems going on. They didn't have high-tech gear, but they pulled off some serious precision. using complex calculations, and even sand for construction. Their art of standardization made its way to Persia, in Central Asia, basically becoming the global weight-watching standard. So, if yoga is your go-to exercise, you definitely have a personal reason to appreciate the ancient Indian geniuses. Over 5,000 years ago, during the rule of the Indus Sarasvati civilization in northern India, yoga was first mentioned in the Vedas. Yoga was refined in shape over the centuries, until it grew into a massive teaching, with over 200 sacred writings dedicated to this way of obtaining enlightenment. At the beginning of the current era, yoga got a new trajectory, thanks to a Hindu writer, who laid down a system of yoga in his text, the Yoga Sutras. It became a whole-body rejuvenation, a life-extending practice, with poses that you are still doing on the mat today. Yoga has reached the Western world only in the 19th century, and it caught on like wildfire. Chess, the all-time top game for intellectuals, is also an Indian invention. Its ancestor was called Chaturanga, and it was a strategic board game that started gaining popularity around 3,000 years before the current era. This early Indian version of chess was played by 4 people, not 2, and had 64 squares. Each player had 8 pieces ranging from pawns to king's bishops to knives, and there was no standards. 6-faced dice they rolled with an oblong 1. Players facing off were actually allies, forming 2 teams based on the direction they sat. A chess that we know and love today was first mentioned in ancient Indian literature. In a legend, it's said that the wife of a villain called Ravana had invented the game to amuse it. Now the word shampoo comes from the Hindi word, which means to soothe or knead. The substance was invented in India in 1762 and was originally used for head massages, hence the name the fur. Shampoo was made of natural oils and herbs. British traders fell in love with the idea and brought it back with MDO England. It took years for the original head massage oil to evolve into shampoo as we know it today, but it's still an Indian invention. Unlike the ancient Greeks who wore animal skins, the Indians started cultivating cotton back in the 5th and 4th centuries before the Koran era. They used cotton threads to produce fabrics that soon became a huge hit in the Mediterranean and beyond. Jute and wool also have their origins in India. Cashmere, the finest and most exclusive type of wool, actually comes from the Kashmir region of India. Buttons that sit proudly on that cashmere cardigan of yours also have ancient Indian origins. Some 5,000 years ago, the Indus Valley civilization started cutting seashells into geometric shapes with tiny holes in them. First they were just decorations, but then people started using them to fasten clothes. Now when you think about radio communication pioneers, Marconi's name usually steals the spotlight. He got a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1909 for his groundbreaking radio work. But there's an unsung hero in the radio waves game, and his name is Sir Jagdish Chandra Bose. He spilled the beans on radio communication way back in 1895. He shot an electromagnetic wave across 75 feet at the town hall in Calcutta, and it went through walls, rang a bell, and even set off some gunpowder. Marconi took a page from Bose's book, using his invention, the Mercury Coherer, as a blueprint for his own two-way radio. Bose didn't patent his genius creation, so he only got his credit a century later.